Welcome to episode 15 of the No Greater Joy podcast, brought to you by the pastors at Grace Baptist Church in Westlake, Ohio, who we want for our people what Jesus wants for his people. And Jesus tells us in John 15:11 that he wants his joy to be in us and our joy to be full. And so we want for our people no greater joy, and are convinced that there is no greater joy than when God's people step into the areas of being 24/7 worshipers, alongsiders, and go people. So my name is Steve Strong, lead pastor here at Grace. I have to my left, once again,
Ryan Atkins, serving in the Timothy position.
Across the table from me,
Andreas Bailey, associate pastor.
And one of our members, Dan Kraniak, is making us sound beautiful. Appreciate his time and effort in making this possible and then getting it out on the web for the billions of people to hear and hopefully be a benefit to them. And once again, we have a special guest, Mr. Andrew Giessman, affectionately known as Andy, who is with Addison's Walk Institute. Walk, right?
Yes.
And appreciate your time. Previous episode, glad to have you back.
Great to be back.
It's really good to have you. But we're glad. You're going to have a great ministry this week with our church. So, want to deal with a topic, individualism, and want to really just kind of answer 4 questions. And I think it's really something that our people need to be thinking about and considering, because we are, in a way, maybe in that boiling pot of our culture where this is really starting to heat up and take root, and we need to think correctly about this. And so 4 questions that I want to consider. First of all, what is individualism? And within our culture, what's going on? What do we mean by this? How has individualism changed or altered the function of society's institutions, including the church? How has this individualism creeped into the church and the way we think about church and ministry? And then what is Scripture's teaching? It's what has God given us, the alternate teaching that we believe would be sufficient over against individualism. In a lot of ways, it's having a correct anthropology, how we think of a human being. What does the Bible teach us about ourselves? So, Andy, I'm going to let you maybe start working toward an answer of this first question. What is individualism? And I'll let you run with that, and then we can kind of follow up with some questions and other thoughts. So,
well, I think there's a couple different ways to think about that word, and one of them is positive. There's certainly a sense of individualism in terms of personal responsibility. I'm responsible to work. I'm responsible to clean up after myself. I'm responsible for my wife and kids and things like that. That's one side of it. Then the other side of individualism would be more along the lines of what we might call autonomy, or something that's totally by itself alone. Does not need anything or anyone else. That kind of person is the center of their world. They are the anchor. So we see individualism, or what I would call radical autonomy, how that manifests itself in culture is the idea wherein each person, it is assumed, can make up their own minds as to what is good and proper, and the expectation doesn't end there. It also would include the demand, really, that each person then affirm their own position, whatever it is. You just can't. Basically, you can never tell someone they're wrong. That is the ultimate cardinal sin. In a culture that is made up of autonomous individuals that seemingly act like they don't need or want anything else in their lives.
So there is, I've written down here some of the thoughts. Is there the standard for who you are is not outside of you to conform to.
Correct.
It is really generated and manufactured by you
That is correct.
inside of you.
That is correct. And this is nothing new. This has been around for a long time. I'm really looking forward to getting into the question what Scripture says about this, because there's an entire book in the New Testament that is a frontal assault on this idea. But even ancient worldviews like Stoicism or Epicureanism has the individual at the center. And in the ancient world, say in the Greek world, there was the idea of we, us, the city state, whether it be Athens or Corinth or Thessaly or Sparta. But you do find more radical individualism in democracies like Athens. And actually see that was probably why it didn't last that long. Because people always get what they want.
Because the logic behind this is your value judgments is really your feelings.
Yes.
Right? And your well-being based on those feelings. Your well-being is how you're feeling.
That's right.
Correct?
And that is indeed logical. If there is no outside or above standard, well, then why would you go with anything else other than what you feel? Of course, feelings are real and everyone has them, but the facts tend not to care.
And so the greatest sin within this kind of framework is for me to deprive you of your well-being, your happiness.
Exactly. What right would you have?
Yeah.
Who are you to tell me?
So, I don't know, you guys have questions before we keep going? All right. So, not yet?
Not yet.
All right. So to kind of follow this, what happens to certain institutions within a society? So if the standard for a human being is self-made within themselves, the logic is or the way of thinking is an emotivism, it's a feeling, it's a psychological therapeutic type thing, and the greatest sin is to deprive someone from their own determined happiness, right, and well-being. That changes the role for institutions, and those institutions could be a school where you are. It could be the home, relationships, parents, government, and a church. So how does this way of thinking change the role for those institutions?
It weakens them, or will radically alter what we might consider the charter or the masthead, documents that founded that thing. So, I'm a adjunct professor at a large regional Catholic school on the East Coast, and I'm watching the change happen right before my eyes. The past 2 years now, we're always being told about diversity, equity, and inclusion all the time, and we are given seminars every which way from Tuesday of how we can facilitate those things in the classroom, and the university is changing fundamentally what it is. It's becoming something different. Churches are the same way. They look the same. They are functionally the same. But if we're going to go down this road that says there is no standard outside of the individual, well, then eventually the mission of the church is really going to be irrelevant.
And so like a school, for instance, or even a church, whereas however many years ago, the aim was to inform, right? Where here is the content outside of you that you need to understand. Now the role of these institutions is not so much to inform, but to, the keyword I think is to affirm,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
This is who this child is, this is who this person is. Our role is not to change anything about that. It's to
Right.
provide a place where they can be affirmed.
Right. Yep. Dangerous place to be.
And if you're not affirming, what are you?
Wicked.
Yep.
You're the white male patriarchy that needs to be deconstructed and taken down because you are the man. And how dare you stand in a position of authority over anyone else? And we're seeing this. Churches, we're seeing this right now. Churches are figuratively burning because of this. I think driven by this autonomy, this individualism. There are so many people coming forward saying, "Well, I was abused. I suffered spiritual abuse in my church." And come on, does spiritual abuse happen in churches? Yes. Are there abusive pastors? Yes. Is most of the bride of Christ abusive? I think not. Mm-hmm. And so it very well could be that some of these individuals who are claiming, well, I was abused, maybe they just had a pastor that told them, no, you can't fill in the blank with some biblical issue.
Yep.
But in radical individualism, how dare you do that?
And because you're guilty of that greatest sin,
Right.
now there's this, they need to be censured and silenced.
Right. And we are catechized, our culture has been catechized from birth that it is totally up to the individual. The movies, the songs, the TV shows, everything that's available to us tells us you are the center of your world. Mm-hmm. A book that a good friend of mine suggested I'd never heard of, published in 1945. It's called Mount Analog, and it's about the weirdest book I've ever read in my life. And it tells a story of this guy who goes off on an adventure looking for a mountain that can be physically climbed, at which, when you're at the apex, your feet are on the earth, but you can reach up and touch the divine. So the guy that wrote the book, that was his goal in life. He was trying to figure out a way to have contact with the divine without God, including huffing chemicals, which led to his premature death. Didn't work out well for him. And so they go on this expedition. So it's somewhat Indiana Jones-esque, but super weird. But the theme all throughout this book, over and over and over again, is that once we get there, if we get there at all, but they do, if we find this place and we have to get to the top, that it would be morally wrong to follow the path that anyone else has made going before you. Each individual must find their own path to be truly authentic. Right. And this is the theme on nearly every page. And as I read that book, I thought, it's really kind of counter to I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one goes to the Father except through me. It kind of sounds like a path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think so where does this take a culture? Because the first thing that comes to my mind is all of a sudden you've placed this weight of deity on every individual, and they can't bear that weight. And so where does this take a culture? If what you have is every individual for himself, herself, themself, itself, I guess is what we have to say. Not really. But, and the weight is on them to define who they are, and their happiness and their well-being is the greatest good. And all I can do is affirm. I don't know, where does that take a culture?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I don't know that we've ever observed that before.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have, in my mind, I think we have an example, but I'm not sure it's a 1-to-1 ratio, and that would be ancient Athens. A radical autonomy that they kind of collectivized in the city-state with the democracy. But it was basically I or we can make any decision we want and will do so. And they voted themselves into oblivion and led to war with Sparta and the end of the golden age of Greece. I think we've had individualism, or this idea of you ain't going to tell me what to do. This has been around for a long time, but it is becoming epidemic. And I don't think we've seen where the results have gone, really. My example is really pretty lame, I think, with Athens, but I honestly don't see how it can lead to anything good.
God have mercy.
God have mercy. God have mercy on the church if we allow it to infiltrate.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good spot. So how are we seeing this individualism kind of creep into the church? And maybe it's not so creeping anymore, depending on the church, but how do we see it creeping?
We'll see. This we have plenty of examples of,
Yeah.
Unfortunately. It would be an expectation that preaching and teaching is going to help me as an individual.
Be a better version of you.
Be a better version of me, which isn't entirely untrue, right? Because
This depends on how you define me, right?
it's how you define me, and better,
Yep.
and all that kind of stuff. Danish philosopher Soren Kierkegaard, Christian, talked about this, and he said that as the father of existentialism, because that's what we're dealing with here, this all fits under that category. He said, well, the way to really achieve true authenticity is to hand yourself over to God, and He's going to give you back what He wants from you. He's right. But in contemporary, that was almost 200 years ago. But in contemporary church life, we want teaching that's going to make me a better version of me. We're going to invest ourselves into things that we feel good about, as opposed to investing ourselves in things that are just true and are necessary as laid out in Scripture. You're not going to have teaching in churches that's going to address things that are destructive to the mission of the church and to individuals and families in the church. We're not even going to go there anymore because, again, how dare you?
Mm-hmm.
It's just spiritual abuse.
It's almost, I have written down here, it's like compassion flipped on its head. So the Good Samaritan sees the robbed and destroyed man laying on the side of the road,
Mm-hmm.
and actually cared for the real need, as opposed to, well, how does Jeremiah confront the priests and the prophets peace, peace, when there's no peace. You've healed the wound of my people lightly. Because, you know, and so in a sense, it's compassion flipped on its head, where you're not meeting the real needs of people,
Right.
and you're
Right.
saying that there's peace when there is no peace, and you just lead people away from Christ as opposed to him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Or a weak version
Yeah.
thereof, which ironically is something that people like Kierkegaard railed against in his writings.
So I don't want to neglect, I think this last question, what is Scripture's alternate teaching, which we would believe to be sufficient and greater over and against this individualism? I know you alluded to this just a minute ago. I don't know, how would you answer that?
Well, there's two scriptures that immediately come to mind, and I already mentioned one, I think, John 14:6. That's clearly a path that has been blazed, and we are told follow it. And the other that comes to mind is Proverbs 3:5 and 6. Right? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. And in the ancient, in Old Testament economy, the ancient idea there is that the wheels of your wagon are in the right grooves, and God's taking you home. And it should be noted, and this will be my dad joke for the day. There's a slight difference between being in a groove and being in a rut. There's a difference. So the ancients had in mind, I'm in the groove, and God is taking me home. I was asked to speak on that very passage at a memorial service for a woman who's 34 and died of cirrhosis of the liver. And she got it, not because of some, genetic thing. She pickled her liver with alcohol at 34. and I was asked to give this talk by the woman who died. Her sister, who was a member of our church, asked me to give this talk. And there were a bunch of teenagers that were there in the church. And I couldn't see them because they were sitting in the back and it was dark. Nor could I hear them. But as I was giving this talk, apparently a couple of them said, "Ain't no God going to tell me what to do." Well, my friend Naomi asked if the plan was she was going to give a few words after I was done. I've heard few sermons as fiery as that. And she got up and said, if you want to wind up in a can before your 35th birthday, go ahead and be your own God. So other than those two passages, the book of the Bible that comes to mind is Philippians, which is a frontal assault on both Epicureanism and Stoicism. And we see, and you don't need to know that to get anything out of Philippians, by the way. That's just hashtag philosopher nerd. But it is there. And so just thinking about, well, where is Paul when he's writing this? Death row in Rome. He's going to die. And he mentions individuals because the fact of the matter is when you become a Christian, become part of the body of Christ, you do not lose your individuality. God saves individuals, but he saves us knowing full well that we are doing this together, that we are dependent in many ways upon one another by God's design. We are contingent upon those things. And so in Philippians, he has this theme that just runs over and over again where he's talking about, he's addressing the church in Philippi. So when he says you, that's plural. And he does mention individuals in here, but just think of the New Testament as a whole. Is it written to primarily individuals or groups? Groups, right? Primarily. We have a few examples, but and how could we possibly logically say, yeah, I think this radical individualism is probably the way we should go. When you have verses like Philippians 1:27, whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Well, there's a standard that is
Outside of themselves.
outside and above themselves. Um, or Paul writing and saying, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, in Philippians 2, where he says, Jesus, in verse 6 in chapter 2, who being in very nature, or actually the better word there is form, being in very form God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. And then he goes on to tell the believers in Philippi, make yourselves nothing. Put others ahead of you. All right. Well, you can't do that in radical individualism. Nor would a radical individual say in chapter 3, verse 10, this is Paul speaking, I want to know Christ, yes, to know the power of his resurrection and participation in his sufferings, becoming like him in his death, so somehow attaining to the resurrection from the dead. You can't do that and be a radical individual. And then chapter 4, around verse 11, he says, I've learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content, which is a full-on roundhouse kick in the face of stoicism. That's why he's saying that. I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. This is one of my favorite taken out of context verses. I love seeing I can do all things through him who gives me strength on workout gear. Because clearly Paul means he can bench press his own weight and then some. Well, if we go back to the beginning, and why is he writing this book? And why does he say to rejoice? He's going to die. So the thing that he's saying he's going to do well is die. You don't say that with a radical individualism. You can only make these statements, unless he's buck nutty crazy, which clearly he is not. You can only make these statements understanding a comprehensive, consistent, and correspondent Christian worldview that it's really true. That says, no, you are not the center of your universe. You are important. You are an individual. God made you as an image bearer. But that is for a purpose that is not our design. It's got to be something outside of us.
The church really, it behooves us to have I like the word robust, clear anthropology. I think I think that is the area of our doctrine that is of utmost importance. We need to be clear with that, and of course scriptural, biblical, and we need to stand on that.
Agreed.
We can't cater to our culture, and I think we need to, as a church, not cave and give in, because we need to stand ready, because we are convinced that this individualism is going to leave the world around us bearing the weight of divinity, which they can't bear. It's going to crush, and it will leave them empty.
Well,
and to stand with the better truth.
The weight of divinity and its unbearable mass, that's brilliant, Steve. And we have ample examples in history of how that goes bad. Mm-hmm. When any human tries to act godlike, it's bad. It's kind of the same principle as utopian societies. always a bad idea, because whenever you try to establish heaven on earth, you're sure to raise hell every time. I made that up myself.
We don't have the drums.
Yes.
That was
Um,
well played.
but we have ample examples of that. It never works.
And when the church will cater to this, you undercut every hope that you offer to the world,
You do.
When-
You offer help, but no hope.
but no hope.
And it would be worth saying that the obverse is just as bad. Hope with no help.
True.
You need Jesus. I need a cup of water. Yeah, but you need Jesus.
Yep.
You can get your own stinking water.
There you go. We don't want to be.
No, we don't want to be that guy.
The gates of hell. Our culture right now is a form of the gates of hell. When it comes to this radical individualism, this radical autonomy, will not prevail, and so we seek to stay true to truth. We're glad that you're here, helping us go and move in that direction.
This is fun.
And
Thank you.
I don't know, appreciate your time.
Sure.
There's so much more that we can be said, and if you have questions, Ryan, you have.
I have one question.
All
This
right,
is going
before we
back to
wrap
our
it up.
last episode. There was a certain term that you said that you hated. And
Man.
it was the safe space term, but you interjected. What was the term you used instead?
Sanctuary.
And can you just briefly, or is that
Are you
is
are
that
you
the big ask?
are you setting me up?
No,
Ryan?
no, because I think
Because
this,
I'm
this goes along with the affirming aspect of, to earn that sticker to put on your door, depending on where you work, you have to follow through with the affirmation aspect of it. But
Right.
just that, and if that's too much of an ask, we
No.
can save that for another conversation.
I'll
But-
I'll do it quickly, because I do think it speaks to it. I mean, if you gotta shut it off, close me down, that's fine. I tell my students on the first day that I do not believe in the idea of safe space, or that you can go somewhere and be part of something where you can block out audibly ideas that you don't want to hear, or visually things that you don't want to see. That's nonsense. That's an environment that is not real. However, I do love the idea of sanctuary. In terms of not a sanctuary in the idea that I grew up. When I ever heard the word sanctuary, it was usually paired with "don't run in the sanctuary" in church, because apparently God lived in there. I don't know, but a sanctuary in, say, the medieval sense is where you would go to seek protection. And in the world of ideas, we need sanctuaries. And as far as I'm concerned, there are two. One is nearly lost to us, and that is the college classroom. It's nearly lost to us. And I'm not just saying in the crazy radical, super liberal schools. It's happening everywhere. The other one ought to be our church auditoriums. But I tell my students, my classroom is declared sanctuary for those 3 hours every week, and that means that there is no question that is out of bounds. As long as they're not attempting to be disrespectful or hurt my feelings or anybody else's, because if you're trying to do that, you probably succeed. But for those 3 hours a week, my classroom is declared sanctuary. And I also tell them, and this is going to sound histrionic, but I'm going to keep saying it because I like the sound of it. I tell them as they come in that they are under the protection of the warrior priest, and that is me. They are under my protection. I am the Lord of that room, which is ordained by God for 3 hours a week. And it is there they can ask questions. And I'm seeing the fruit of that right now. I can't give details here, but I'm really seeing the fruit of that. And I take that role very seriously, because I don't go into all this detail, but sanctuaries just don't happen.
Yeah.
They have to be fought for. It is war. and we need combatants who understand the nature of this war. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Good.
It does. I was just thinking that along the lines of the autonomy aspect and what this, our previous conversation with Generation Z, what they're exposed to if they're on a college campus and they see those stickers on doors, and what that doesn't mean, and what that doesn't mean for the people who don't have those stickers on their doors.
Right.
And I think you just summed it up very well with the sanctuary aspect of it. I love that as the response to that ideology.
Well, I don't have any stickers on my door, but I also don't have a door. they took it away from me.
All right. Well, your new Twitter is going to have to be @Warrior Priest.
Okay,
Let's make it. Get a hat too. All that good stuff. Fight for it. Thank you, Andy.
You're welcome.
Thanks
Thanks,
for being
Andy.
here and your thoughts. And I'm sure this will generate, hopefully, a lot of good discussion.
I hope
All
so.
right.
Yeah.
Until next episode, God bless.
God bless you guys.